The news usually paints a descriptive story for their audience. Many gruesome stories find their way to becoming national news, showing the true nature of some of society's worst people. We've heard stories such as Casey Anthony and remain thankful that the majority of us have our families as healthy support systems. Not all families are perfect, and not all family members value their family's presence in their lives. Some family members have done the unspeakable, such as abuse, theft, or even murder, for reasons that will never justify their actions. Today on Top Trending, we are going to dive right into today's list: Top 10 Worst Family Members. It is said that greed can bring out the worst in us. For some people, money is more important than family. Raymond J. Tortoreo Jr. is an example of someone who values money more than his blood. In 2015, Tortoreo used his grandfather's identity in order to get a $25,000 loan from Cross River Bank in Seneca Falls, New York. He used that same identity in order to withdraw another $18,000 in cash. Later in the year, Tortoreo purchased a new 2015 GMC Denali pickup truck for $70,000, as well as produced another fraudulent loan for $17,000 under his grandfather's name. A year later, in 2016, Tortoreo used another relative's identity to secure 3 more loans for a total amount of $48,000. Raymond J. Tortoreo Jr. was arrested in December of 2017 and has been charged with 8 felonies, 7 counts of first-degree identity theft, and 1 count of third-degree grand larceny. All the charges are Class D felonies, and Tortoreo has the chance of spending some serious time in jail. Raymond J. Tortoreo Jr. stole $20,000 in cash and $160,000 in personal loans by taking advantage of his vulnerable grandfather, and it's landed him number 10 on Top Trending's list of the worst family members. Caitlin Conley must have felt like the luckiest girl in the world when she first started dating Adam Yoder in 2011. She was loved and welcomed into the family by his mother, Mary, who also gave her a job at the family-owned chiropractor's office that her and her husband ran. Adam and Caitlin struggled with money. As many know, money can be the #1 killer of any relationship. Little did Adam know, Caitlin Conley was the #1 killer in his family. After going through another breakup, Adam Yoder tried to finally sever ties for the last time. Although devastated, Caitlin continued to work for his parents in New York. In 2015, Mary became suddenly ill, and within 48 hours her organs and body began to shut down. Mary suffered 8 heart attacks, each time being revived by doctors until a fatal attack took her life. Everyone was stunned, and the autopsy revealed that she had been poisoned by colchicine. At first, investigators looked into the husband as he started dating Mary's older sister soon after Mary's passing. The police then received an anonymous letter that claimed Adam Yoder was the murderer. Looking into Adam Yoder, police found an email address made under his name was associated with ordering the colchicine. The anonymous letter was sent from Mary's workplace and had female DNA on it. The police also found receipts in Adam's car that were in fact planted by Caitlin Conley. While Conley will be behind bars for 23 years, Adam Yoder has found himself in therapy. He reported that after Conley's sentencing, he was very depressed and blamed himself for introducing Caitlin Conley to his family, and that he will be in therapy trying to recover from this traumatic life event. In 2006, parents of 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson knew something was wrong when their clean-cut daughter was slowly transforming her style into more of a goth-type appearance. When Jasmine's parents, Deborah and Mark, found out her daughter was dating a 23-year-old named Jeremy Steinke who believed he was a 300-year-old werewolf, they forbade their daughter from dating him. Jeremy Steinke and Jasmine Richardson continued to correspond through MySpace and Vampire Freaks websites. It was later found that their private messages is where Jasmine Richardson told Steinke she had a plan that involved killing her parents and then living with Steinke freely. It wasn't soon after that both of these lovebirds would face serious time in prison for their plans. The couple went to the Richardson home and stabbed Jasmine's mother, father, and brother to death. Steinke was encouraged by Jasmine to kill her parents while she figured she would do her little brother a deed and murder him. It would be unfair for them to not have parents, according to one of Jasmine's several testimonies. Steinke stabbed Deborah Richardson 12 times before turning to Jasmine's father, Mark Richardson, and stabbing him 24 times. Meanwhile, Jasmine Richardson went upstairs where she proceeded to stab her 8-year-old brother 5 times, including one large slash across his throat. After the couple killed Jasmine's family, they were spotted laughing and kissing at a nearby restaurant, apparently celebrating their actions. Jasmine Richardson was sentenced to 10 years in prison, while her boyfriend Steinke received 3 life sentences with no chances of parole for 25 years. Jeremy Steinke has since changed his name in prison to Jackson May, and Jasmine has recently been released, living secretly within the community she once shocked with horror. Now she lives under a new alias and has to live the rest of her life knowing she is the reason her whole immediate family is dead. Two parents thought they were doing the right thing by giving up their child, Lauren Kavanaugh, to her adopted parents Bill and Sabrina Kavanaugh at birth. At the age of 2, however, Barbara Atkinson changed her mind and due to a technicality was able to pull young Lauren away from her adoptive parents. Once retrieved, the couple decided to lock their child in a closet for the next 6 years of her life. Lauren Kavanaugh was starved, beaten, and raped for 6 years before her stepfather showed her off to a neighbor who alerted the authorities. The trauma occurred during this time is something that still affects Lauren Kavanaugh, who is now in her mid-20s. Kavanaugh was forced to stay in her closet. It's where she slept, used the restroom, and lived. If she cried too loudly, her parents would drown out her cries with country music. To this day, Kavanaugh cannot listen to country music without flashbacks haunting her. But that's not all. Her parents sexually abused her and also passed her along to their friends to be sexually abused while they laughed. When Lauren was finally found in 2001, she was 8, but had the same weight as a 2-year-old. Her tiny body had so much damage from the years of sexual abuse that she had to undergo several reconstructive surgeries. Barbara told investigators that she had never loved or felt anything toward her daughter as she did her other children. Lauren's siblings, who were also living under fear of the wrath of their parents, would sneak Lauren food wherever they could, and were only allowed to refer to her as that girl. 17 years later, Lauren still struggles with the trauma her parents put her through. She finds herself sleeping in confined areas like showers if there's no closet nearby, or will gorge on food during the late hours of the night. The trauma has caused erratic suicidal behavior that has even caused Lauren to yank the steering wheel in her car while her girlfriend was driving. On Dr. Phil, Lauren said her message to her parents would be that she hopes they rot in hell. The words that almost seem too kind of Lauren to say, considering the torture she endured living with Barbara and Kenneth Atkinson. John and Lorena Bobbitt and their story is just another example that not all relationships are what they seem. Both of these individuals have tortured each other with damage that would last the rest of their lives. Lorena Bobbitt was abused mentally, physically, and sexually over the years by her husband John. She was in constant fear of her life and often reached out to friends and family for advice regarding her relationship. In 1993, one night Lorena snapped and took matters into her own hands. Once her husband John was sound asleep, Lorena took a knife and cut off John's penis. She left their apartment with the severed appendage and drove away in her car. After driving for a while, Lorena threw John's penis into a field before realizing the severe consequences of her actions and turning herself in. The trial concluded by releasing Lorena, saying she was not guilty due to insanity causing an irresistible impulse to sexually wound John. She was ordered an evaluation period which lasted 45 days until she was released. The case between John and Lorena Bobbitt opened eyes to the domestic violence issues in the early 90s and spread awareness quickly. The incident was mentioned in the 1999 film Fight Club. Tyler Durden commented that even though the main character's house blew up, worse things could happen, such as a woman cutting off his penis then tossing it out the window of a moving car.
You know, man, it could be worse. A woman could cut off your penis while you're sleeping and toss it out the window of a moving car. There's always that.
Just like many teenagers in the 80s, David Bourne had a passion for punk rock music. It was a time before smartphones or Spotify, so teenagers then used cassette tapes to listen to their favorite bands. After a dispute with his father over his punk rock cassettes, David Bourne brutally murdered his family with an axe in 1988. Not only his parents Bernard and Paulette suffered at the hands of their son, but so did his 2 younger siblings. His sister Diane was 14, and his little brother Rick was 9 when they were murdered by their older brother. The bodies of all 4 of them were found on a Thursday evening, all still in their nightclothes from the day before. It was reported that the murder occurred early in the morning, before everyone started getting ready for school or work. The average person would think that brutally murdering his family would cause the teenager to be distressed, and perhaps he would go on the run. David Bourne instead did something that still baffles people 30 years later. He dyed his hair black and shaved the sides, giving himself the ultimate punk rock hairdo, the mohawk. After that, David Bourne went to school. He proceeded to go to class and brag to a female classmate that he had just killed his whole family. It wasn't long before the rumors spread and school officials were on the phone with police. After statements made from Bourne's classmates, the police found that David Bourne told other students the day before that he was having issues with his dad over music, and that he would kill them. David Bourne was later convicted with 4 charges of first-degree murder and 4 charges of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 3 lifetimes in prison and will most likely not see the free world until he's well past 70 years old. Some felt the sentence was too harsh, but considering the heinous crime scene David Bourne left for police, others felt secure that someone like that, teenager or not, would no longer be walking the streets of Rochester, Minnesota. Many people are becoming more aware of the war on drugs that still exists in our streets today. The heroin epidemic that has spread across the United States of America has caused countless deaths due to overdoses. But those aren't the only deaths caused by heroin. The family of Christopher Kirby found the disturbing truth that his heroin addiction would become fatal to his other family members. In September of 2017, Christopher brutally beat his own sister Deborah Powers to death and was very close to giving her husband the same fate. Ronnie Powers fought for his life in the hospital and afterward gave a chilling statement that the arguments which led to Deborah Powers' death was over Christopher Kirby being denied use of their bank cards. After beating the couple, Christopher Kirby stole their cards and even their TV to trade for heroin. Kirby and his wife were both guilty of using the stolen cards for their purchases. As his wife faces around 3 years in prison, Christopher Kirby might face the death penalty for his actions. Next time you think you have the worst brother, think back to Christopher Kirby, who brutally murdered his own sister for her bank cards, landing himself on our list of worst family members. Not all marriages end in happily ever after. Some spouses have issues with jealousy and tend to express their concerns in a negative way. Negative, however, is no way to describe what Dmitry Gratyov did to his wife Margarita when he thought she was having an affair. The young Russian Gratyov took his wife to a forest outside of Moscow after accusing her of being unfaithful to him because she had asked for a divorce. When Margarita repeated over and over that she was indeed faithful to him, Gratyov decided to take things a bit further in hopes to torture her into a confession. Using an axe, Gratyov struck her fingers. He then proceeded to sever each of her hands before taking her to the hospital and turning himself into the police. It took a complex 9-hour surgery to reconnect one of the hands, but they were unable to fully reconstruct the other. Margarita told police that he had bound her in such a way that she was unable to run away, and that the way he tied her had also helped reduce blood flowing from where her hands were cut off. Dmitry Gratyov wrote her from his cell while waiting for his trial that if she didn't stop the divorce and wait for him to get out of jail, that he would kill her or her family members. Margarita told reporters in January of this year that she does not respond to any of his attempts to reach out to her, and that her main focuses right now are her recovery and raising the 2 children she had with Dmitry. If the abuse that Lauren Kavanaugh suffered was too much for you, then this story will definitely hit you in the gut. The Turpins had 13 kids that they held confined in their home their entire lives. The ages of the children ranged from 2 to 29. When one of the children, whose age was 17, escaped the home through a window, she used a deactivated phone that she had found to call the police. All of the children were extremely malnourished and lacked cognitive skills. The 29-year-old weighed 82 pounds when first admitted to the hospital. The children were on a very strict and small diet and were only allowed to shower once a year. In their free time, the children were allowed to write journals. Hundreds of journals are now being scrutinized to put together all counts of abuse their parents are now facing. David and Louise Turpin are facing over 40 counts of child abuse, neglect, assault, torture, false imprisonment, and the list continues on as more evidence is currently being found. The 17-year-old that escaped and called the police claimed that they had been planning their escape for over 2 years. Now the children are recuperating from having the worst parents, and for the first time are introduced to things they can enjoy, like iPads and Star Wars. The Turpin parents are currently on trial and are pleading not guilty to their monstrous acts toward their children. Good luck winning a jury when the whole nation believes that you're the worst parents of today's time. We've seen what happens to some of these poor children after years of neglect and abuse, but nothing quite compares to Jeannie, the first ever recorded feral child. Clark Wiley believed his child was mentally retarded after birth and decided that isolation was the best thing for his child. Until Jeannie was 13, her father had her strapped to either a child's toilet or a crib in an almost completely dark room. Clark Wiley had beaten his wife to being practically blind and also beat his son for years until he finally ran away from home. But poor Jeannie remained in a dark room alone and was on a near liquid diet. Her father kept all sounds from her and would play recordings of dogs and beat her with a wooden plank if she ever acted up. Once police were involved in 1970, Jeannie became a ward of the state of California. It was after that the government approved funding to research Jeannie. You see, Jeannie had been so deprived of human interaction that she was unable to speak. She lacked all social skills and linguistic skills that create humanity as we know it today. Jeannie was the first ever feral child researchers were able to study. She had zero attachment to other humans, but was very curious about all the objects around her. After being confined for so long, any new sound Jeannie would hear left her constantly searching for the source. Clark Wiley committed suicide before the police were able to take him into custody. He left 2 letters after his suicide. One was for his son, while the other was for the police. It had details of the abusive lifestyle he had put his family through. Clark Wiley has gone down in history as a man so cruel he made his son disappear, his wife blind, and left his only living daughter feral. This leaves Clark Wiley #1 on our top 10 worst family members.